right. Hello, Fortina's brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is September 10th, 2021. I had to pause there because I thought somebody was at the garage door, but we are good. Oh man, we are on the edge of our seat now, aren't we, brothers and sisters? We are watching and praying. We are seeking. We are expectant. We know this is the month that everything is going to change. And that's what we're going to spend some time in today. We're going to spend a little bit more time. I say that's what we're going to spend some time, and we're going to spend some time in quite a few things today, but of which a good portion of is this story of Babylon. This attack on this first Babylon, this great city. And we've talked on it a little bit in the last video. We've shared on it recently and several months ago, but we're going to tie some new things into it. And we're going to, as we do, we're going to tie it into the what we can see happening in reality, or things that we know of that are coming in reality in relation to, for example, the eclipse. One of the first things I'm going to go into is a piece of scripture that came about while listening to a bit of a pastor talk on one thing, and it was about like 70 ox and everything else, and it got me into chapter 10 of Genesis. Well, we know Genesis has revealed itself to us from chapter 1 to chapter 21, chapter 21, 22, right? We've got those chapters, 21 chapters of Genesis. The first one's just like the 21 chapters of John. And we know that then we should be able to see things in Genesis chapter 10 and see how they align. Well, we're going to get into that. It's going to be fun. It's going to be pretty wild. But then we're also going to tie this in and talk about these things that we're looking for to take place at the beginning. I'm going to share with you a pastor that was shared with us yesterday, I think it was, maybe the day before, in the forum, and what this pastor had happened to him many years ago, and two of the three events that have happened already, and what he was told this past Feast of Trumpets by the Lord as to what would be coming. We're going to get into that a little bit. And it's not so much that I'm going to say, I believe this is coming tomorrow. Yes, as soon as tomorrow is a possibility, but between tomorrow and the end of October. Now, if the end of October, we don't really have to worry about it, do we? Because as the bride of Christ that we're watching and praying to be accounted worthy, this is something that would be after the bride is gone. But we've got to check a couple things in there, because as you've known, we've spoken in the past about this new modern day Cyrus, and Cyrus is the king of Persia. And if the king of Persia is the one declaring a peace deal, declaring and allowing Jerusalem to go and rebuild, then the head of gold, as we said, must have already been attacked. Something or something has already happened to the head of gold. So we're going to get into all these pieces, and we're going to tie this all together. You're going to see how it takes us from Genesis, it takes us into Revelation, and it's going to take us into the Gospels, it's going to take us into Daniel, it's going to take us into Deuteronomy, it's going to take us into Isaiah. it's jam-packed, guys. We're just going to have some fun digging into these things and revealing these connections, because there's some really cool things, that we've shared in the past. And as I said, in showing this connection to the beginning here with this great city Babylon, which we believe is New York and Washington, that whole area, it doesn't mean all of America is going to be decimated right off the bat. Okay, attacked, something happened, maybe that's the meteor hits the water and that's what destroys it all. We're going to talk about some of these things today, because it's got to happen near the beginning. It really does. And you're going to understand why. It must happen near the beginning. And when we say these things, here's something we must remember. I don't know if I'm going to title the video "The Fear of the Lord" or not, but maybe something along those lines. We'll see how it goes, because we're going to understand that not only is it, we always say, well, it's the Lord, of course, it's the Lord allowing these things, but why is he allowing these things? so that the enemy can appear victorious? No. So that he can bring punishment to the enemy? No. He's doing it for his people to wake them up. The destruction and the attacks and all these things that are coming, guys, are coming against the church and Jews, against the church and Judah. Why? Because he's trying to wake up his people. It's going to be the end of days. They're about to begin. The biblical end of days before the millennial reign are about to begin. And when he releases this, when he allows it to happen, he's allowing it to happen to his people so that they will wake up. All we got to do is look at the history of Israel. For thousands of years, whenever they turned from him and started veering away and then worshiping false idols and gods and all these other things, he turned his back on them and destruction came. Was it because he was going to turn his back forever and he hated them? No, it was their disobedience. This is why the group of the bride of Christ, the Luke group, those that are going to be covered in white, arrayed gorgeously, who are watching and praying and seeking the Lord, this is why they're being removed. They're being removed because they've been those loyal, diligently loving and seeking the Lord. What's coming is for those who were sleepy and started turning away, or half I was going to say the other word, half bothered with spending some time with him. He wants this dedicated and committed to him. And that's what the tribulation is about. He's going to make you wake up. He's going to allow you to be attacked. He's going to allow it to come. But you're going to see in the scriptures, not only does he allow it, allow the enemy to bring the judgment, he's going to only limit, as crazy as it's going to be, as bad as it's going to get, he will still limit the amount and the duration so that the enemy cannot say, see, it was us. It was us that did it, not your God. It was us that allowed it. It was all in God's control. And the scriptures, some of the scriptures we're going to cover today, show us exactly that. So let's get going in this. First of all, as we always do, anybody who's new to this ministry, you have to come to these playlists here. See this playlist, this one right here? The Revealed End Times Study Note Series. It's I don't want to say mandatory, but essentially it's mandatory, because if you want to understand anything that's being spoken about in this ministry, if you don't understand the foundation that's been laid here, you're not going to fully grasp everything we're talking about. You need to understand that we've been revealed who the Gospels are speaking to, a mystery that has been hidden for thousands of years, for 2,000 years. It's been revealed here in this ministry over the last 2 years, over the last 4 years. This is the ministry of the revelation of the end of the Lord. His is to come. And it's revealed, the beginning of the understanding of the revelation is in the intro, or the who the Gospels are speaking to. That's the first video right here. Intro to the End Time Gospels Revealed is who the Gospels are speaking to. You're going to understand that the Gospel of Luke is written to the bride of Christ, but he knows all things. So he'll have things in there also pertaining to Mark and to Matthew. But his focus is the bride of Christ. When you get to Mark's Gospel, you find out that Mark's is written to the house of Israel, or to the church, because they're grafted in, remember. Okay, that's who Mark is written to. And Matthew is written to the Jews. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, everybody knows Matthew's written to the Jews. Well, then why are you reading from it? You see, I know people, I can hear people saying that in their heads. Oh, yeah, well, I already knew Matthew's written to the Jews. Okay, are you a Jew? No. Then why are you spending your time all in Matthew? You see, and that was just a little poking fun, but you see, it's because it's been hidden. It's been a mystery for a long time to clearly understand who the Gospels are speaking to, because we've been taught that we can just take Matthew and look at the other synoptic Gospels of Mark and Luke and just add to the storyline, like add those pieces from different points of the same event. But what we realize and what's been revealed here is that, in fact, they're speaking to three different groups of people, and we have proven it. This video is just the introduction to proving it. The second video, it's the intro to the realization that the tribulation is not one set of 7 years, but two sets of 7 years. But don't worry, you don't have to be here for any of it, because the pre-trib is true. But what you realize in understanding who the Gospels are speaking to, you realize the revelation that the argument of pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib, which one is true? You realize that all three of them are true. And that all of this infighting within churches that talk about prophecy, there was no need to argue because they were all true. You see? But what caused all this? How did we miss one set of 7 years? We missed it because we've been all taught from Matthew. That's what this third video gets into. Because our foundation has always been from the Gospel of Matthew, and everything else just built onto it in a viewpoint, well, we think it's as if we're at the end of Mark and only Matthew's time is about to begin for them. But that's completely false. It's completely false, and it's what's caused the people to say 3.5 years of seals, 3.5 years of trumpets. It's what caused people to say the seals and the trumpets overlap like a sandwich and they're going to play out together. I mean, all of these crazy theories come about, but it all stems back to not understanding who the Gospels are speaking to. This is how beautifully revealing, how incredible this revelation is. And it all began 4 years ago, I guess 2 days ago now. 4 years ago, this past Wednesday, it all began. I promise you, come and watch the first video, the second, and then the third video. It's going to blow you away. Then jump down and come and watch the sixth video. And you'll see that pre, mid, and post are all true. It's incredible. And see all these, in a lot of these videos here, in these intro videos, there's going to be printouts that you can print out, you can download, whatever you want, and you could read them and study them. And where you're going to find them is down here in the description box below. All right? This is where you can come and get them. So on top of all this, these are just intros, but we also wrote a book in March, and you could get the book. You can download the PDF for free, or you can get a paperback on Amazon or the ebook on Amazon. I always recommend a paperback, not because I care about whatever small peanuts of pennies that come in. That doesn't matter. What matters is that there's something on hand to share with people. You could read one chapter at a time. You could take it with you, whatever the case may be, and share it with others. That's the key. All right? Because these are mysteries that we've been desiring for those seeking scripture. It's what we've been desiring to understand forever and ever and ever. Who are the Gospels speaking to? That is the beginning of the revelation. All right? So come and watch these. Those are the intros. And when I was telling you that we also have the book that you can get, the way to do it, you can either go right here to the website, ministryrevealed.com, and it's right there on the home page. You can just click the links, or you can actually read the book right there from the website. You don't have to download, you don't have to buy, none of it. But you can also download the free PDF in English, in German, in Norwegian, and very soon, still maybe a little bit longer, but shortly, we'll also have it in French. All right? So we're making it available as best we can to everyone we can. And when you come to the website, in the menu box, you can go to a place called the forum or forum. And in there, we've got about 800 and something people, over 800 people in there. And we're sharing news and events and like-minded people getting ready and watching and praying and all sorts of things going on in there with like-minded brothers and sisters. All right. So you can come and join us in there too. It's also free. It'll take you like 5-10 seconds to sign up and join us. So let me show you this here. So this is the last video, for example, to find the links to things that I'm sharing, whether it be timelines, whether it be charts, whether it be the book, all those things. Yes, you can find them all on the website for free. All the videos are one-click downloads as well to be able to download and keep with your left behind info. But all of those things, or many of those things, or links to those things, can be found in the description box under the video you're watching right now, or some of the ones before it. Okay, you can support the ministry, you can buy the book, you can download it for free. Postcards that we have to get people to figure out what is this, and they click on it, and all sorts of things in here, timeline charts, the whole stuff. All right, even down here we've got our address, we've got our email, all these things. You can contact us or download the info or whatever it is that you like, found right there. All right, so we're gonna have some fun in this today, because we're gonna see some new things, we're gonna connect new things, we're gonna hear new things, and we're gonna continue to just tie these pieces together. Just add to it, add to it, add to it, build it, bring more and more and more clarity, like I've said in the past. So for those also who are new, this chart right here, you'll read about it in the book, but this is called the revelation of the chapters to years. All right, these books, all of these books, plus the gospels, but these books have opened to us and have revealed insights into their chapters that relate to events that happened during the years of seals and trumpets over the 14-year period, even to the 15th year jubilee. It's fascinating. Okay, there's a reason why John has 21 chapters. It's incredible. And Genesis is what I was talking about at the beginning. Genesis 21 chapters to John's 21 chapters are in complete sync and give us clues and insights of things that have happened in the past as types and shadows of things that are to come. So we've got the was, we've got the is, and within them is revealing the is to come. It's fascinating. All right, so this, you're going to hear me talk about some of these things as we get going. This is the timeline chart. Okay, put it all in one. If you go watch videos about the timeline, you'll see this chart there, and it's explained, and it's drawn, it's brought in closer. Even in the last video, we talk about it some more. Okay, there's the book downloaded. See in paper, in PDF, it's 287 pages. All right, let me get going. So where we're going to start is right here in Genesis chapter 10. As I said at the beginning, it was based on a pastor that was talking about the number of sacrifices and so forth. And so I thought, well, let me go read into this and see what I can take from it. But you got to understand, knowing what I know, knowing what we know here in this ministry, and who the gospels are speaking to, when I came to look at this in Genesis chapter 10, it didn't dawn on me until I read about something else that I wasn't looking for. I wasn't looking for, you see, I was looking for all the people lined up and the names and the sacrifices and all these things that were connected. But as I started reading it, I said, wait a second. I saw Nimrod's name, and he became mighty in the earth. And I saw that it was the beginning of his kingdom. And then I saw somebody else's name further down, and I said, wait a second. This is Genesis chapter 10. We know Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10 should equal the 3rd year of seals. Well, what do we know about the 3rd year of seals in this ministry? You got to understand how to count, right? The 3rd year doesn't mean you've already turned 3. It means from day 1 to day 365, that's the 1st year. So when you turn 1 year is complete. 1 year plus 1 day, that 1 day is part of year 2. So you're in the 2nd year until you turn 2. So in the 3rd year means 2 years complete plus 1 day. That's now in the 3rd until you turn 3, which is now 3 years complete. It seems, I talk about it, and sometimes I feel silly mentioning it because it seems so obvious. But when you ask people, and every single time I have physically in person asked somebody, they always had it the other way. And what is that other way? That's if saying, okay, I turned 7 years old. So when I turn 7, I'm 7.5 later. So I'm 7 years and 6 months old. So I'm still 7. You see? But are you really 7? No. You're in your 8th year. But because we don't count 0 to 1, we're still like 0. It's not till you're 1. When you turn 1, they still say you're 1 until you turn 2. You see that? So from 0 to 1, they don't call you 1. But when you're 1, you're called 1 until you're 2. But really, after you turn 1 till the time you turn 2, you're actually in your 2nd year. It's just the way we say things, and it ends up confusing understanding. So I know it sounds silly to say, but it's important to understand. Otherwise, all things would be thrown off by a year, and it doesn't make sense. Okay, so when you see 3, it means in the 3rd year. Let me show you one quick example. Daniel's a great one for that. Daniel 9, about Cyrus. We're going to touch a little bit on Cyrus today. You see, what does in the 3rd year of Cyrus mean? In the 3rd year means right here, this would be in the 3rd year of Cyrus. Okay, in relation to the end time understanding. 2 years complete. So anytime from 2 years and 1 day to the day that 3 years is turned, that is all in the 3rd year. Okay, so that's a great example. That is in the 3rd year, not complete 3, in the 3rd year. I'm hammering it down because people need to understand what that means. Okay, so you see, we know tribulation. We've been talking about this for a long time, right? Genesis 7, we're in the 7th year right now. It's almost over. It's almost over. And when it's over, what? The 40 days of the Son of Man will be over, and the Holy Ghost going out, and the 14 years will begin, and that will start chapter 8. You see, when the 40 days were over, you're in chapter 8, and what happens? It's the end. It starts with the end of 40 days. The 40 days are over. The raven and the dove goes out, and then we know in the story you have 7 and 7. 7 days is 7 years. 7 days is 7 years. You got 14 years beginning. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3. So this is in the 3rd year. When we look at this, and I started looking at this closer, I said, well, wait a second. There's a lot of good stuff. A lot of this is going to be built off of this today. So we know this equals in the end time revelation, in the open book understanding, chapter 10 is that 3rd year, which can be anywhere from 2 years and a day to 2 years and 365 and turning 3. Okay, we know that generally what we're going to end up looking for is something that will equal 2.5 years. What's 2.5 years? In the 3rd year. You see, this half year puts it in the 3rd year. So 2.5 years is in the 3rd year. And what do we know? Who shows up in the 3rd year? The antichrist gets his power to continue 42 months. It's the second half or so of seals, because the 42 months are the last 3.5 years of the first 6 years of seals before the Lord comes at the end of the 6th seal, as we know, on heavenly Mount Zion. Okay, so we know that this is saying in the 3rd year, so most likely 2.5 years approximately. And why is that important? It's the first time Nimrod's mentioned. It just so happens that this first antichrist character, Nimrod, is mentioned in the chapter to year that equals 2.5 years when the antichrist will receive his power to continue. Listen to what it says. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter to chase, right? Chase. He was a mighty hunter. Chase, hunt, okay? Before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and so on and so forth. Okay, so at 2.5 years, we have a mighty one who is a hunter who has his kingdom now. Okay, watch this. We're going to find some really good stuff, because then we're going to go down here later. And remember how this works. It's all in the types and shadows. So we're looking for a connection that, first of all, being in chapter 10, we know that it equals that 3rd year, which would be about that time frame of the antichrist coming into power. Okay, and in this case he's called a hunter, chasing people, hunting, right? Watch this. Let's go into, okay, I just want to see where I want to go here. Oh, that's right. So here in Deuteronomy 32, we haven't been in Deuteronomy 32 in a while. This was something I taught on a long time ago, and I've touched on it just here and there on occasion. But this is a really good connection. This is going to take us into Romans and all sorts of things. Watch this. Where did I want to start? Okay, right here. So, but Jeru waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat. Da, 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 da. Then he forsook God. Okay, so they've waxed fat. They what we were talking about, right? Like the Jews, they've become complacent and they've gotten fat and they forsake God. Okay, so then he forsook God, which made him and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. People want to say, well, Jesus wasn't there in the Old Testament. Are you sure about that? He's right here. Okay, he forsook the God which made him and lightly esteemed the rock, capital R, of his salvation. Listen to this. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoked they him to anger. We know some of that, don't we? We know this word. They provoked the Lord to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came up newly, whom our fathers feared not. Of the rock that beget thee, thou art unmindful, and has forgotten God that formed thee. You see this? All these things they've forgotten, they've turned from God, they barely acknowledge and recognize what's going on. And what did they do? They're provoking him to jealousy. We know some of that too, don't we? We said that in the scriptures. Zechariah chapter 1. We know this very well. Let's go to Zechariah chapter 1. Zechariah chapter 1, who we know is written to the Jews, 14 chapters. Hosea is the only other book, 14 chapters. It's written to Israel or to the Gentiles. And Zechariah is 14 chapters written to Judah. And so let's see what it says. Remember this? Okay. In these 70 years, like we are right now, coming to the tail end of it. And what does it say? Verse 14 and 15. And the angel that communed with me said unto me, cry thou, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with great jealousy. I am very sore displeased. See, I am very sore displeased. What does that mean? Angry, wroth. Okay, they've provoked him. So he's jealous and they've provoked him to anger. Okay, with the heathen that are at ease. For I was a little displeased and they helped forward the affliction. Bang. This will be the beginning of tribulation. This is the beginning of the attack here on Jerusalem. And then we read what? These are the four horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. See, we've shared on this before. We know Zechariah chapter 1 very well in relation to this conversation. Now we go back and we keep reading in Deuteronomy. Okay, provoked who formed them. Let's go to verse 20. Deuteronomy 32 verse 20. And he said, I will hide my face from them, and I will see what their end shall be. See, their end, the last, their actual end in a future time, the end time. Again, we told you so many of these things are prophecy. It's laden with prophecy throughout all the scriptures. We've talked about that here in this ministry, how not only those books and not only questions that people have had over centuries that we're getting answers to, that we can reveal because of the Gospels and the timeline in relation to the tribulation and the end days that are to come. But we found new questions and have been able to answer those new questions by the revelations of these things that continue to open. Okay, Deuteronomy 32 is one of those things. Remember what Christ said in Luke chapter 24 after his resurrection. He said the things that still needed to be fulfilled about him in the law of Moses, that's the first 5 books, in the Psalms, and in the prophets. That's where the bulk of our ministry is all about. And then in the New Testament, that reveals it all for the end as well, and who it's speaking to and so forth. Okay, so now this is talking about their literal last end in the end of days. That's why we were able to connect it to Zechariah chapter 1, provoking the Lord to jealousy. But we can show it even more clearly than that. Watch this. And they moved me to jealousy. Deuteronomy 32:21. And they moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger. See, jealousy and anger with their vanities. And I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? This should sound very, very familiar to all of us. First of all, we just saw in Zechariah, which we know prophetically is this moment in time where we're at right now. Literally, when it says in the end of days, in the end of time for them, you've provoked me to jealousy. So what's the Lord going to do? I'm going to move you to jealousy. You brought me to anger. I'm going to bring you to anger. I'm going to bring you to jealousy by using a people that were not my people. I'm going to make them my people, and I'm going to make you jealous. You see, are the Jews, let me ask you this. This is something I've pondered in the past a lot. Are the Jews really jealous about Christians? I know it's rhetorical because I'm not doing a live show, but you know, are the Jews really jealous of Christians? Well, they hate Christians for the most part, right? But is it because they're jealous because of what God has done for them? No, because they don't believe in Jesus. There might be some like that. Maybe that's one of the reasons they hate us, but generally it's not. It's because they don't believe in Jesus, right? So what do you think is the thing that will really provoke them to jealousy? This is what I've always said. You got to remember, guys, we look through end time eyes. Our ministry and the revelation is to come, which helps give understanding to what was and what is. And so for me, what I've always considered that to be was the escape, the rapture. Okay. Yes, the pre-trib escape, but even more so the rapture. When the rapture happens and it's like hundreds of millions of people, pre-trib is only going to be tens of millions, but hundreds of millions when it comes to the rapture at the end of seals. Judah's going to be pretty jealous at that point, wouldn't you think? These incredible things having happened to a people that wasn't his, to a bunch of Gentiles. That's going to provoke them to anger, isn't it? So let's go see where we find this conversation in the New Testament. See, it's perfect. Watch this. Let's go to Romans. And for those that don't know what I'm using here, this program is called eSword. It's free for everybody. Maybe Apple, it's a few bucks a year, I'm not sure. But this one here on PC is free. All right. And the reason I always promote it or try to remember to promote it is because look at this. Word definitions. This is what explodes your understanding. This is what makes you realize that just because something says woman here and woman here and woman here and woman here, all 4 of those definitions can be a different woman being spoken of. And the only way to really understand is by the context of the meaning of that word. This is having that great big concordance books at your fingertips. All right. So let's go see what he's talking about here and where he brings this up. Okay, we find this in Romans 11. So we're trying to connect the timing of all this. All right, so he says in Romans 11, starting in 11, verse 11, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their fall salvation is come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Okay, so yes, by our salvation now, I'm sure there are Jews that are jealous in that sense that God is doing these things for the Gentiles, but I don't know to what extent that's really the anger point or the jealousy point. I think the greater jealousy is when the vanishing happens. All right, when the escape happens. So watch this. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, okay, not it's like a dual meaning there. If the fall of them be the riches of the world, meaning the house of Israel, meaning the Gentiles who are grafted in. You see, they mingled with the whole world. So the world means the church. Okay, the Gentiles, the church. You can even say house of Israel because it got so diluted and mixed in together, right? But it also means the fall of them is the riches of the world because they're some of the richest and most successful all over the world with that small group of people for the Jews as well, right? So then it says, and the diminishing of them, the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them, the what? The allowing them to come in at the same time? No. If the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? You see, people always say, well, where's the resurrection from the dead? Well, as Christians, we're not looking to remain on the earth. We're looking to be in heaven with the Lord in the kingdom of God. We're not looking for a resurrection of some garbage body, even though it's going to be made new, and it's for those living on the earth. And who did he say life from the dead would be? It's to Judah. If the casting away of them is the reconciling of the world, which is all of us except Jews, what shall the receiving of them be? The Jews, not the world, but life from the dead. You see, do you understand what this says here? This is almost like a side note, but it's all connected, of course. When we read in scripture that it says he came for the whole world, he came for the world. You understand? Are you catching what I'm saying just by saying that? It means he didn't come for the Jews. He came for the world. Because the Jews have been cast away. And they've been cast away until the time of the Gentiles is over, which is the end of the seals tribulation. And when that portion is over, the reconciling of the world is over. But the time of the Jews is still to come. That's the tribulation of trumpets. Their time of reconciliation. You see? This is that confusion that so many people miss when it says the world. He came to save the world. Yes, everybody but the Jews. Except some. This is what Paul's talking about. You see? But those of his own flesh as a Jew, that in what he's doing, he might save some of them. But he knows he's not going to save them all or most or even a large portion because they've been cast away. They've been blinded. Which means if he's come to do all this for the world and not them, then there's still something yet to come for them. We talked about that in the video I still plan on doing a full-blown video on that. We'll see how it goes. I have got a ton that will prove it out, hands down. It'll just blow your minds. But it was already proven in that video. This time it's the bull's turn. All right. So then it goes on to say, for if the first fruit be holy, Christ, right? Be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. Do you guys remember that? Okay. Watch this. So if Christ is holy as the first fruit as a Jew, then all the branches are holy. But we know what? We know that the branches have been cut off, right? Because why? Well, because they've fallen away. They've been cast away. Because it's the time of the Gentiles. And if some of the branches be broken off, see? And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. You see that? Do not boast, right? Boast not against the branches. Boast not against the Jews and saying, ha ha ha, we're the ones that have now been grafted in. Too bad for you. This is a great example right here. You see this? This is a great example for all those people that say once saved, always saved. Okay. We clearly know that this is about the Jews' branches being broken off, being cut off, because they have been cut off, they have been cast away, so that the Gentiles now can come in and be grafted in. Okay. Until the time of the Gentiles is over, and then the natural branch can be brought back in. But listen to what it says to those who were grafted in as the wild ones, meaning the Gentiles. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. And thou standeth by faith, be not high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he spare not thee. Another example that if you get all high-minded and high and mighty and think you're the one now, guess what? He can cut you off again just as easy as he cut off his own. It's another example that once saved, always saved is just a crock of churchianity. But we can prove it. We understand why. We understand. All of it boils down to Matthew. Every single time these issues come up, it always boils down to Matthew. Because the foundation of all understanding has been Matthew, which means to the Jews. You see? So if you're at Matthew, it's like you're at the end of Mark and you think everybody is going pre-trib. Well, that's because you're at the end of the 7 years of seals and you don't realize that what you see only are the 7 years of trumpets, which means at the end of the 7 years of seals, which is like at the end of Mark, it is the great multitude rapture. Unfortunately, it's the end of the first 6 to 7 years of seals. Hello. This is how important it is that what we're teaching. See? Let's keep going. Listen to this. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. On them which fell, severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also shall be cut off. You see? It doesn't, we've shown these types of scriptures all over the place. He says it right here, crystal clear as day. If you continue in his goodness, otherwise, so that doesn't mean it's not somebody that wasn't saved and, oh, they were never saved anyways. No, this was a believer. This was somebody grafted into the tree. If you continue in the goodness, in his goodness, otherwise, you also will be cut off. You see, once saved, always saved is a fallacy. And again, I don't say people do this on purpose. Because if your foundation is Matthew, it makes sense. It makes sense to believe it. But like everything else, what happens is when you show them scriptures like this, they throw their hands up and they try to explain it away with something else when it's crystal clear what it's saying. So why do we see what would appear to be contradictory? Because they don't know who the Gospels are speaking to. But when you understand that massive revelation, you can understand that there are three groups. And when you understand those three groups, it's identical to the Lord's harvest. 10% to the Lord, the 90 or so, or the majority of the main harvest, and then corners and gleaning. That's what the big picture of the whole end of days is like. Pre, 10% to the Lord. Out of the 90% that remains, there's the major harvest, the main harvest, of which the corners can't be taken and the stuff gleaning that fell has to be left. So the main harvest, that's the rapture of the great multitude. And then the corners and the gleaning is Judah at the end, pre, mid, and post. Everything in perfect harmony with God's law, with his ways of harvests. You see? But this is why there's this struggle with certain people about it, because they just don't grasp who the Gospels are speaking to. Okay? And it says, let's continue a little bit more. Let's see, I don't know how far I want to go down here. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. For if thou were cut out of a wild tree, out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted in contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be of the natural branches, be grafted into their own tree? You see, how much easier will it be for God to just boom, graft them into their own tree when their time comes again? You see, because it's got to be until the what? Until the time of the Gentiles is over, right? That's what all this goes on to say. So once the time of the Gentiles is over, then these guys start to wake up and they'll get grafted back in way easier because it was the natural tree. If you remember, we taught on this not too long ago. In fact, the last video or the second last video, you remember this? It was part of one of the questions in relation to the word branches. You see, in Luke, there's no mention of branches. In Mark, there's a mention of branches, but the mention of branches is a different word than the one in Matthew. And that's because the one in Mark was the type that's going to be trampled upon. They're going to be trampled underfoot. That's the Gentiles. That's the church that is going to be trampled underfoot by the antichrist during the time of seals. But Matthew's branches are as if broken off. And when the Lord comes in at the end for Matthew's group, what's he going to do? He's going to graft those broken branches back in. That's what we were just reading. See how awesome that is? Now, I went into to a lot more detail there than I was going to go into. But you see, the point was what? But rather, he's going to provoke them to jealousy. And he's going to provoke them to jealousy by using the Gentiles, by using the church. This is what we were just reading about here in Deuteronomy 32. See, they move me to jealousy. Yeah, I'm going to move them to jealousy with the people that weren't mine. And I'm going to move them to anger with a foolish nation. Okay, this is what he has done by going to the Gentiles, of course, but it's going to be accentuated by the escape and the rapture. Now, let's keep going. Verse 24 of Deuteronomy 32. They shall be burnt with hunger and a devouring heat and with bitter destruction. I also will send the teeth of beasts upon them, with the poison of the serpents of the dust, the sword without, and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin and the suckling, also with the man of gray hairs. I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease among men. Okay? Do you guys remember that again? If we go into Zechariah chapter 1, we see that again, right? Not only the jealousy that they caused Christ to have, but or the Lord to have, but what did he do? What does he do? He scatters them. So we're having this exact same conversation going on in Deuteronomy. For they are a nation void of counsel, neither is there any understanding in them. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. There it is again. Now remember, what am I talking about? We're still in this conversation about the time of Nimrod as well, right? Remember, Nimrod was a hunter. He chased and he hunted. And look at what we have here. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except their rock? This is the rock of salvation we read earlier. This is Christ. Except their rock had sold them. And the Lord, this is the Lord God, had shut them up. For their rock, remember, because they turned to other gods, is not our rock, as our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. You see, I was talking about this in the beginning. This is why I was talking about it. And we say, well, wait a second. You see, there's different ways always to look at these things. I've shared this in the past. How can one chase 1,000? Okay. How does one chase 1,000? Well, what is this? This is Satan. This is the type and shadow of Satan chasing the workers. And who are the two that put 10,000 to flight? This is the false prophet and the antichrist going after the Christians, who are the 10,000 times 10,000. There's not 100 million Jews on the earth, but the house of Israel, number of the stars, right? Because they're mixed in with the Gentiles. This is the type and shadow of the antichrist and false prophet being put to flight. Okay. And you could say put to flight. It says vanishing, escape. You might think it's pre-trib, but it's not, because these two don't show up until mid-seals. See that? The time of the antichrist, Nimrod type and shadow, as another type of antichrist coming to power through the power of the dragon being given to him, isn't until the time of mid-seals. Okay. And so what's going to happen? It's our rock is going to what? Allow the enemies to bring the judgment. He ends up saying up here that he's going to allow it to be for a certain amount of time, but not too much, because then the enemies will say it was them and not God. Okay, you'll read about that in here as well. So look at this one who chases 1,000. To chase, to hunt. So that would mean, this is where it gets tricky, because I hadn't really paid too much attention to this portion before, because one of the ways to look at this verse, or this grouping of verses here, is knowing that it's their latter end. We know that one, who is Satan, is going to go after the thousands of thousands. And we know that the false prophet and antichrist are going to be the two that go after the church. So one after Jews, one after these two after Christians. Okay. It's a type and shadow. This is what's going on. Because why? They've turned from our rock. They're in the little rock instead of going to the big rock. And the Lord is going to use the enemies to judge them. This is what I was saying earlier. I had this conversation with my son. I had it with my wife over dinner, and saying how, it seems so crazy. It seems so hard to believe that all that's coming, the wickedness, the craziness, the devastation, is all for the Lord's will in his love. It seems really crazy. And for those who aren't Christians and those who aren't seeking and diligent with them, it seems like the most absurd thing. But when you understand that if it wasn't for this, there would be nobody left to save. There's no way to keep bringing in and to bring in the great multitudes without absolute devastation, to have them realize there's nowhere else for them to turn. You follow? This is why he's doing these things. It's not easy to understand, of course, but it is definitely out of his love. And so now, knowing this, one chasing 1,000 and the two putting 10,000 to flight, we consider what we were reading about over in this portion with Nimrod and being a hunter, and it's the beginning of his kingdom. This is kind of interesting now, because Nimrod is a type and shadow of Antichrist, and his timing in the 3rd year in our chapters to years revelation puts it exactly in the timing of the Antichrist beginning his kingdom. It's really quite awesome. But as being a hunter and the beginning of his kingdom, and seeing in Deuteronomy this connection that's there to the one who chases and who's a hunter after all this that we say, well, wait a second, that would be Satan there, or that spirit of Satan, and there's still the Antichrist and false prophet coming on the scene, who are the other two. Well, here's what I want to show you. With Nimrod, we're going to see in Revelation chapter 12, listen to what we see. We've covered this woman. We've got Revelation 12 pretty tight, man. We've got it down pat in the big picture of the end of days. It's pretty awesome. We've talked about this Revelation 12, this woman clothed, this queen of the south. This queen of the south who comes to the Son of Man during his 40 days. We talked about how the bride is gone before the travailing. Okay, so the bride's got to be gone before this even starts. And when the travailing portion starts, the travailing is covering the 40 days of the Son of Man. When the 40 days of the Son of Man are over, then the tribulation begins. The 40 days, yeah, it's certainly portion of the tribulation, but it's not the 14-year portion. Okay, it's that 40 days above the 14 years. Just like we've shown many times in the story of Genesis from chapter 7 to chapter 8. And we explained recently that this word "and pained to be delivered," this here is literally 2.5 years represented in pained to be delivered. 40 days, so escape, woman shows up, the Lord is here for 40 days. When he's gone, then the 14 years begins, and it begins with the 2.5 years, just as we read in Mark, when Mark chapter 13 here, where is Mark 13? You see, just as Mark 13, when it says, these are the beginnings of sorrows, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, earthquakes, famines, and troubles. This here, this one verse, is the first 2.5 years of seals before Antichrist shows up. Okay, before he gets his power to continue. Okay, this is what's being said in this right here, pained to be delivered. You can go look up the word here. Let's go look it up for those that are newer. The definition of the word pained is incredible tribulation. Okay, to torture, pain, toil, torment, toss, vex. It's craziness. All right, so then what happens? What happens after this 2.5 years has passed? And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon. So at about mid seals, or our 2.5 year time frame approximately of seals, after World War III and all these things that are going on, this great red dragon shows up. Now it's interesting, isn't it? Because we know that there's the great red dragon, and of course that there's the great dragon. This down here in Revelation 12 is when Satan, the actual Satan, has lost his battle in heaven against Michael and his angels, and Satan and his angels are actually cast down to the earth. The pit is open. I mean, this is the Matthew 24, and these days will be worse than in all of creation up to this time, and never shall be again. Okay? Whereas this portion, when this dragon shows up, when the antichrist gets his power to continue 42 months at this point, this is where Mark says it'll be a time worse than it was in all of creation until this time. You see, Mark's only says up until this time. So worse than all of creation up to this time right here. And now it's going to be worse than ever. Whereas Matthew's portion says now this will be the worst that it will ever be, and it'll never be this bad again. That's how bad this will be when Satan's cast down. This is the great red dragon. Who is the great red dragon, brothers and sisters? You can go ask probably any video game kid. You can go ask somebody, doesn't matter Christian or not Christian, and you say, what nation is the red dragon? And 100% of people that know anything about dragons will tell you China. China is the great red dragon, and it's China who's going to be the one to give the power and the authority to the antichrist. Remember Revelation 13. You see what happens now? The beast, which I saw, was like unto a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth like a lion. Well, this was the first 2.5 years of tribulation. This is the first 2.5 years of seals. The lion that attacked Jerusalem, the bear that attacked America, the leopard that took control over Europe and where the command of everything went. And then what happens? Then the antichrist is what? Going to receive his power to continue 42 months. 2.5 years of seals with these guys from Daniel 7 as well. Then the fourth beast, he gets his power to continue 42 months. And he's got all these guys under his power now over all the earth. But you see what's crazy? Something that's not often spoken about. Who gave him his power? The dragon. Who on earth is this dragon who is going to give this power to the beast? It's the great red dragon. Yes, it's through Satan's influence. You see, we're taking things that were and things that are in the current history of the last 2,000 years and the things that were in the thousands of years before. And you got to understand, this time it's going to be the whole earth, brothers and sisters. Back in the time of Christ, no, it was throughout the in the was in BC, it was the Middle East. It was the Middle East, and then it included Europe. And then even in our modern time, in the is right now, when we had World War II, yeah, it was a world war, but it was really in Europe and throughout that section around them. What's coming next for World War III is the whole earth. Everybody is going to be affected because it's the end of days. It's the end of days. Everybody's going to be affected. Okay, so this dragon, look at what happens. They worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast. saying, who is like him and who shall make war against him? You understand, the first 2.5 years of tribulation that takes place to that point where we're in the third year, which is Genesis chapter 10, is right when this time happens, when he gets his power to continue 42 months, and it's the dragon that gave him his power. You see, who's the dragon that's going to give him the power? China. Look at what China's been doing. How long do you think World War III is going to last? How long do you think it could possibly last with the weapons men have now? It's going to be devastating. That's why when this time happens and the red dragon gives them that power, I believe, as I've said before, that power is going to be given to Saudi Arabia. He's going to be, remember, they have their Mahdi, right? So he's going to receive that power. China's going to give it. But China's going to be the big head behind him. He's going to be the one that everybody says, ooh and ah. But why are they going to be able to do this? Why would the world turn to them? Because these 2.5 years are going to be World War III. No hiding, drones, I mean, all sorts of things. They're going to be going after Christians and people at this time for sure, and people that are resisting and hiding out. But it's nothing, the scriptures tell us, until this point starts. Once he gets his power to continue, the dragon gives him his power. They're going to wait till it's so terrible on the earth. Then, when he's brought to the forefront of power, the world is going to be screaming for some relief. Except those whose names are written in the book of life. They will never fall for it, right? This is that point that Mark talks about. When Mark says, as we just showed you, let me go over here. In Mark 13, this is that point right here. In those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of creation, which God created unto this time. Okay. Matthew's that goes on to say, and shall never be again. Okay. This is when he steps forward. This is what we've been teaching. This is the 2.5 year mark. See, the abomination of desolation. What is this abomination of desolation? It's the mark of the beast. It's one, it's the mark of the beast. Two, remember, you see, I was telling my son today, I was like, people tend to read scripture because there's so much detail that often scripture is read not purposely, but often haphazardly. And so what happens is when reading it, they miss some very important information. Okay? Information like, let's go to Revelation 13. So now we've got this red dragon. We can see the red dragon shows up at this time and gives power and authority to the antichrist. So the red dragon in some form is here. Yes, he's probably empowered by Satan, but it's not Satan's manifestation on the earth, because that doesn't happen till mid-trumpets. I mean, it's so crazy even to consider what that would be like, that Satan would be cast out, his fallen with him, and then the pit opened. Holy craziness, man. So when we come in here and we see that it's the antichrist, we see what he does. He makes war against the saints. That's right. Okay. He makes war against the saints. Let's read it. Revelation 13:7. And it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindred and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. This is going to be like, man, what, billion and a quarter people, something like that. Okay, some dead, most will still be alive at the time of the rapture, but a lot of them, of course, will still be dead, but the majority still alive. That's what this number encompasses here. I believe approximately 1.25 billion, maybe a little bit more, 1.25 billion to 1.5 billion. Not quite, but almost. Okay, a lot of you say, well, how do you know that? It's another video. And it's approximately, I'm saying. All right, so now here's what happens. This is why it's so important. We spoke in the last video or a couple of videos ago, and I was telling my son about this today. This is why it's so important. You can't be saying it's the mark of the beast now. You should see the craziness of some videos people have out there. It's caused them to get so messed up in their theology. And I could always tell you, and I could point it out 100% of the time, that it goes back to not understanding who the Gospels are speaking to. So then because they can't understand, how could this happen? How could we be having the mark of the beast now? Well, I think what has to happen is people need to stop reading, like I told my son, like teenagers who read half-assed, who pay attention half-assed. This is what happens. Okay, I don't need to spend a lot of time here, but we've talked about this before. And I'm going to share this part again because it's connected to this whole Nimrod thing and the timing of it. This is the 2.5-year approximate time frame into seals when power is going to be given to them. And what we forget about is, yes, the mark is on. And what does it say? It says on the right hand or on the forehead. Okay, the word on means in. We've shared it in many places. We've talked about it in Revelation 14 just the other day. Okay, and I'm going to share to you guys because, see, this is 2.5 years in. But what happens even before this? We're going to touch a little bit more on what happens before this. Well, Babylon's got to already be gone. Okay, so here it is, on the right hand or on the forehead. So if there's already 3 jabs and there's a 4th jab coming, what, you have to take the mark 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times? No. Do you understand that what the mark even means? Okay, and what does it say? That no man might buy or sell save he have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. You can do any of these 3 things. Look at what the definition for the word mark is: to scratch or etch like a stamp, as a badge of servitude. Do you know what that means? A tattoo, some sort of mark or tattoo that will be on the right hand or forehead. Okay, look at what it means. Go a little bit further. The idea of scratching, a palisade. People say, oh, a palisade like a needle. No, it's a needle that goes tick, 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 to give you the tattoo. This is what it is. But it gets even better than that. This is something I had shared in the past, but I didn't share recently. And that is, and it says, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. This is only used one time, and we shared this before, remember? Xi Jinping, the president of China, who is taking over the world, who's attacking Christians in his nation, burning and closing churches and destroying them. He's about to take over the world. This is something the Western world has been trying to stop with all sorts of things for decades. They know they're growing. They know it's about to happen. In fact, if you guys remember this video that I've shared so often with you guys about that there would be a flu that would be launched in China and everything else, all of this is to prevent China from growing, from having the power and the ability. They wanted to decimate them. This is what's going on. And when we look at the mark of the beast, or sorry, the number of his name, the number of his name is Xi Ji, like China's leader Xi Jinping, and it's Xi Ji, but the word is stigma. So you know what it says? This word for stigma is the name or the number for an obsolete letter that comes from scar or mark or insights, make a mark. So what is it saying? Xi Ji's mark. Xi Ji's mark. That's what he's saying. The number of his name is 600 is Xi Ji's mark. Look at what this means. Okay, there's new people that haven't been here for a while that hadn't seen this one. Check this out. Here's the word used one time. Okay, this is the word one time, 4742. See that? 4742. It's the root word of this third letter in the definition of 600 Okay, that brings us this one use for stigma. Listen to what it says. You guys that are newer, you guys haven't seen this. A mark pricked in or branded upon the body. The ancient Oriental usage, see, to ancient Oriental usage, slaves and soldiers bore the name or the stamp of their master or commander branded or pricked out into their bodies to indicate what master or general they belonged to. And there were even some devotees who stamped themselves in this way with tokens to their gods. Who? The ancient Chinese. Did what? Stamped a mark on the forehead or on their right hand. They branded them. You following? This is one of the ways. It's China. The time of the great red dragon is this time when the antichrist gets his power to continue for 42 months. This is when they're going after the Christians. This is they'll take the mark. They'll bow down to him. They'll do all these things except if their name is written in the Lamb's book of life. It's not taking a needle 10 times, 5 times, 3 times. It's crystal clear. And you don't even have to take the mark. You can have the number of his name. Or you could have his name. And having either of those three will still allow you to buy or sell. What does that mean? Well, if you know his name, you might say before going to the store that you pledge, and you would say, I pledge. And you might say his name to be allowed to go and shop. It's not only about the mark. And now if you understand the mark, you can clearly understand we are not there yet. Are these jabs connected to something with it? Yes, I believe, of course they are. And I would never put it. It's getting tense for everybody out there right now. All right. And no, we're not going to take it. None of my family, if we got to quit jobs, whatever it is, that'll happen. But we don't have to worry about, we don't have to be in fear, brothers and sisters, because we know where we are. This is why it's so beautiful. This is why having the revelation of the Gospels, the 14 years, the opened books, we of all people in the revelation of Scripture, in those watching and praying and seeking the Lord worldwide, out of all of them, we should have the least concern for these things. We can understand because we have the years. We don't have to bumble about and say this is coming, that, and then mix them together and cross them over. The books have revealed the truth. Watch this. Let's go back now. Okay, so we can understand the beginning of his kingdom, the 2.5 years in, all these things are directly connected. You want to see something else cool about this time, or cool to understand but won't be cool to be a part of? We need to understand that when when Babylon is attacked, Babylon falls, is fallen. We believe it's America, or I should say New York and Washington, that whole area. It's not the entire country. Yes, there's going to be World War III, and yes, it's going to come to America. America is going to be so diminished in its ability to help and to fight off, because Washington and New York, it's being devastated, being wiped out, gone. Okay, that it's going to be so busy helping with its own nation and the millions that are going to vanish in the pre-trib escape, that we have to suddenly realize and say, well, wait a second, hold on a second here. Who then, you see, if America wasn't in a desperation, wouldn't they be able to help Jerusalem when they see Jerusalem being surrounded from the north and them compassing Jerusalem about during the 40 days? America would just send troops in. I know you could say, well, this administration hates them and they would see them destroyed anyways. We know that that's part of the plan. We get that. But they've never really done that. They've still always sent to help. In this case, we know in Luke 21 that they're not going to help. You see? So we'll get to that in a bit, because there's a video that was shared, as I was mentioning earlier, that was shared in the forum yesterday or the day before, about this vision this pastor had. And I'm going to share it with you because we're either looking at something that's going to happen tomorrow, and most people won't have to worry about watching this video because they'll be freaked out, or it'll happen a little bit later on after the bride is gone. I don't have the exact answer for you, but we're going to see that this is about to happen. And if Babylon is destroyed before Israel is surrounded, then prepare your hearts and minds, because we may be about to see something here in the next day or so. Okay, watch this. Before we get further into that, I kind of got off track there, got ahead of myself. I want to show you guys something else here. Okay, we're still in this portion of time when Antichrist is going to receive his power, and the dragon, the red dragon, is going to give him his power. We know this is in the third year, that 2.5 year time frame. Okay, watch this. You get the names of all the kids, and from this father and from that one and everything else. But look what caught my attention. This is all because a pastor mentioned Genesis 10, and I went to have a look, and I caught all this stuff and found all these connections to it. Look at what we have. Let me go into eSword and show it so much better. And unto Eber, so Genesis 10 verse 25, we know in the third year, that 2.5 year time frame. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. Now, of course, you come and read the context of what it was, and we could see it was the sons of Noah and those generations when the nations and all the nations of the earth were divided. That is not the end time revelation. Look at what you're about to see. His name was Peleg. What does Peleg mean? Earthquake. His name means earthquake, and earthquake meaning to rill, that is a small channel of water, to split. So something that is going to split or divide the earth in this earthquake that would cause streams of water to come through. Okay, his name was Peleg, and in his days of earthquake, the land was divided. Okay, where are we? We're still at that 2.5 year. We're coming to the end now, in that time frame of 2.5 years coming to an end. We're still in chapter 10 of Genesis. Do you know what happens at this time? So If the beginning of this is the fall feast time, is this time frame that we're in, is in the fall, and we're saying this is 2.5 years later, that would be 2022, 2023, and 6 months, that would be springtime of 2024. You guys starting to catch my drift? Earthquake that divided the land in chapter 10, which equals 2024. Ring a bell? 2017's total eclipse that came across, and 2024's total eclipse that comes across. Do you guys remember when that eclipse is? It's on, where is it? April 8th, 2024. April 8th, 2.5 years from now. The exact connection to the chapter and the name and the definition of what's taking place and the timing of the antichrist and the power being given. This is where X marks the spot. This is the 2017. This is the 2024. That is the X marks the spot. And do you know what's right below it? Check this out. Do you see this is Illinois? Right around here is here, let me show you. Right around here, see, is St. Louis. St. Louis, then you see the streamway right through here, and this is the X marks the spot. Many of you guys remember in 2017, a lot of people were looking at this, and right in here, I don't know if you guys remember this, but this section right here in the X marks the spot, see the X marks the spot, right here is called, in the United States, Little Egypt. How funny is that? How interesting is that, right? Right here in Little Egypt in 2024 on April 8th will be the X that marks the spot. There is St. Louis. And look at what's underneath. There is St. Louis. Follow that little river. This is where we're talking about. And what's there? The New Madrid Fault. How many people in 2017 were talking about this X marks the spot and America being divided and ripped apart here and saying what? And saying that Lake Superior in this great rift that would take place would probably divide the nation in half and cause a stream, maybe not all the way to the bottom, or maybe it's from the bottom and not all the way to the top, but would cause an inlet of stream of water to come through. What was the definition of his name? His name was Peleg, earthquake that divides land and caused a small channel of water in the dividing, in the splitting of it. In the chapter to year, that is 2.5 years in. Brothers and sisters, these are not coincidences. This is exactly timed to the revelation of the opened books. Exactly timed to the revelation of the open books. You want to see something crazy? Let's keep going. Let's keep building on this craziness of this timing. If this is that timing and a water disturbance with this great earthquake, do you remember when we were just in Mark what we were talking about? Not only where is it? Not only does this equal the time that will be worse than any time of creation until this time, be because the antichrist receives his power and the dragon is given his power, and all the craziness that's going to ensue against the Christians in the church at that time, it will also be at the time of the earthquake that will virtually rip America apart or in two. Talk about a craziness of time. That is going to be a massive earthquake. And the timing in Mark is exact. the timing to Revelation 12 to Revelation 13 to the time of Nimrod in the chapters to years, it is all the exact same time. And if you remember, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. You see, what else do we see? Troubles of water, a disturbance of water, roiling, stirring, agitating of water. Now you might think that I'm saying this is the connection to the 2024. No. This is now going to bring us back to the beginning. Back to the beginning. You see all this? Look at that. Right where the connection is, right in the year, guys. I'm going to close these off so I don't take up too much of the power for the poor laptop. See how awesome that is? It's all in order. You see, now when we go to the video we just did, the last video or the second last video, I think it was the last video actually, and we were explaining how Revelation 14, down here, how could it suddenly be talking about Babylon has fallen if it already happened at the beginning? All right? That great city. How can the mark of the beast be saying now anybody who receives that mark when seals are over, how is it possible? Okay? We've explained it in the last video. Well, now I've just showed you again where clearly the mark of the beast is, the timing of the mark of the beast, the implication of the mark of the beast. It's not for about 2.5 years when it'll really be kicked in, when it'll really get to a crazy, crazy time, worse than all of human history. That's at this time, right? All through here. See, third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast or his image, see, if you worship him or his image or receive his mark, either of them, see, the same shall drink of the wrath. So here's year 1. Year 2 is the warning. Year 3 is the same shall drink the wrath from the wrath of God. And then year 4 and the patience of the saints in year 5. Why? Just like Revelation 13. Here is the patience of the saints, because now the persecution's coming. Now watch this. What about Babylon is fallen is fallen? Let's get a little bit more insight into the Babylon is fallen is fallen. This is going to be fun too. So now that was more of a midish seals, that point when we know Antichrist gets his power. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say, well, as we've said in the past, we know that Babylon must be gone before the 14 years even begin. Do you understand that? Before the tribulation of the 14 years begin, it would appear that Babylon, that great city, not the entire country of America, but that great city through New York and Washington in there, that is what's going to be destroyed. But it would appear it must be destroyed before the 14 years even begin. And for that to happen, it would mean that sometime between tomorrow and October 30th, 31st, America or New York or Babylon, that great city, must be destroyed. But there's a problem with putting it at the end. Now again, its destruction does not have to mean that all of World War III has started. That's not what we're talking about. Its destruction could come by that roiling of water, you see? That destruction will come by the millstone, will come by the stone's throw. So the issue is, when is this stone's throw going to take place? Could it be September 11th tomorrow? Could it be sometime in Tabernacles after as the bride is leaving? Or could it be towards the very end? This is what we're going to cover now, because we know a few things about this, and I'm going to share with you some more cool things about it. We know in Daniel chapter 8, after he explains to him, let's go to Daniel chapter 8 in eSword. He tells them from this vision, you see, in the third year, okay, in the third year. But what does he do? He's telling them, and sorry, that wasn't the third year of Cyrus, that was over in Daniel 10. He says the two horns, or the two rams, and then he goes on to explain the rams and the goats and all those, okay? And then he gets the interpretation of the vision, and he's told that the interpretation of the vision is for the end. Again, we just covered this, so I don't need to go into all the detail of it. But he says, the ram which you saw having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. Okay, the rough goat is the king of Grecia, which is also a place in Arabia. Okay, we've shared this. So the first two are Media and Persia, and we've shared on the image of Nebuchadnezzar, right? The statue of Nebuchadnezzar, that the head of gold we all know is Babylon. There's no mention of Babylon here. No mention of Babylon. Okay, no mention of Babylon. It starts with Media and Persia. Who is the king of Persia? Cyrus. Cyrus is the king of Persia. And on the statue, that's the chest and the arms. Okay, then it goes to Grecia. So Media and Persia, we know from, as we saw in Daniel 10, in the third year of Cyrus. We know Cyrus is the king of Persia. So in his third year is the exact same spot as the others. His third year is right in here. Okay, right in here. That's the third year. Where would it be in the timeline? Exact same thing. He gets his power at the beginning, and what we're seeing in Daniel 10 is right here at this point here. And the king of Grecia, boom, then gets his authority there. So what are we seeing? Go back into 8. Again, what we're being told is that there's no head of gold. And we know that the king of Persia is Cyrus. We've shared on this in the past. We used to talk about this one a lot. It's a very important piece of scripture. In 2 Chronicles 36, we see that Babylon, okay, this attack is allowed to take place on Jerusalem. Okay, it's destroyed, it's brought down, and then what happens? Babylon is suddenly out of the picture. And then that had escaped from the sword carried away to Babylon. Now remember, when we read these things and we look through these things, some of these things are events over hundreds of years or years and decades. In the end, what was thousands of years or hundreds of years will be taking place in their types and shadows over the tribulation of 7 years and 7 years. This is the opening scene. So what happens? All of a sudden, from verse 20, the conversation of Babylon ends. And it says, until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. So the head of gold, Babylon, is out of the way. And you have the reign now of the kingdom of Persia. And what does it say? To fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept her Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. We know what this means. This is the 70 years we're in right now coming to an end. It's the same thing we covered a little while ago when looking at Zechariah chapter 1. These 70 years, and they made God angry. Bang! Deuteronomy 32. You see, then all of it, they made him angry. So what does he do? He's going to turn against them, right? You remember what happens when he turns against them? It gets pretty twisted, doesn't it? It gets pretty twisted. It gets pretty twisted because why? They failed to allow the land to rest. So what happens in Leviticus 26? Because they failed to allow the land to rest. I'm not going to go too far into it, but you see, 7 times it must now rest. 7 times. And what ended up happening? He says, if you will not be reformed to me, but will walk contrary unto me, you're going to be hostile. You're going to be contrary unto me. The Lord says, I will walk contrary unto you. Again, I had this conversation with my wife over dinner. And over dinner, I mean, it's not fun table conversation when you're talking about what he's going to do. You see, and in this case, we know he's talking to Judah. It's the 7 times for their disobedience of letting the land rest, and of course, everything else they did. Right? He's going to bring a sword upon them, and he's going to avenge them. And I will send pestilence among you, and you shall be delivered into the hand of your enemies. This is what he's talking about to Judah, to Jerusalem today. That's going to happen within this fall. And they're going to be removed from the land for 7 years. So as it said, the land can take her Sabbaths. It goes on to explain that here. So that the land can remain desolate to enjoy her Sabbaths, because while you were in it, it did not get its rest. I've said it before. This is why the Lord cannot build the temple yet, because the land is defiled. It must now rest for 7 years, which is why they're going to be removed. Here it is again. I will scatter you among the heathen. I will make you desolate. But you see, this is where it gets really hard to understand how the Lord is going to do this. And he's doing it out of love. This is how crazy it is. You know, again, he says, then I will walk contrary unto you. Also in fury. Could you imagine how crazy, terrible that would mean? That God is going to walk against them contrary and in fury? It's so bad. That's something people would never consider doing. They're going to do. And it's the verse 29 that follows about eating flesh. I bring this up once in a while, and it's why the possible title for the video is the fear of the Lord. This is all going to take place because of their lack of fear for the Lord. We can show that the reason for pestilence, and it's towards the Jews, is because if we go to the book of Matthew and you want to see Matthew's discourse, you'll notice that it's different than Mark's. Of course, we've shared it many times, but look at this. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence. Plagues, disease, pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. What was the difference in Mark's discourse to Matthew's discourse? Mark's was a roiling of water, and Matthew's is pestilence. And what did we just see? The one in Leviticus is the bringing about of pestilence. Okay? This is what's coming for them. This is for that disobedience. But what are we looking at still is who's in charge. Well, Babylon is out of the picture. And it's the king of Persia. So it's the king of Persia who is now on the scene, who is Cyrus, now in his first year, who's going to make a proclamation to allow Jerusalem to be rebuilt, because he says the Lord God gave him all the kingdoms of the earth, and to allow them to go and rebuild. We know this whole story. We know this story, don't we? So if Cyrus is the one making the declaration, and we follow this into Daniel chapter 9, we see in Daniel chapter 9, it says, verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. What does that mean? That means it's been attacked and destroyed. And there's a commandment to allow them to go back and rebuild. But as we know, there won't be any rebuilding for 7 years. Weeks as years. Who's the one that gives the commandment? Cyrus. Well, if Cyrus is the one who gives the commandment, and it's got to be at the time when there's still 14 years left to go, because they got to be removed from the land so the land can rest for 7, and then they've got their 7 years of trumpets, that attack's got to happen, as Zechariah says in chapter 1, right towards the very end of the 70 years. Because it says these 70 years, right? How long, O Lord, will you not have mercy on Jerusalem and the cities of Judah against which you have had indignation these 70 years? So in these 7 years, this destruction is coming upon, and the tribulation will then begin. So if Cyrus is the one making this proclamation, if Cyrus is the one who's in charge, because Babylon is now out of the picture, when did Babylon fall? Do you understand? This is why I'm saying this is our 50-day count. And the beginning of the tribulation, the 14 years beginning right in here. We know Luke's discourse says, and when you see Jerusalem compassed about, get everybody to flee, it's time to go. That's only the 40 days. So when the Lord leaves, within a very short time after the 40 days of the Son of Man are done, that attack will happen. Which means somewhere in this portion of time is when Cyrus will make the declaration, not Babylon. So Babylon is going to be attacked before. Now, all of America isn't going to be destroyed, just New York, Washington area. The question is it going to happen at the beginning of the 50 days? Or is it going to happen a little bit later on? Well, I want to share this with you now. Listen to this pastor. I've got it at half speed faster so we can go a little bit faster, because I want to listen to a little bit of it. He had a pretty wild vision, and 2 out of the 3 measures have happened, and the Lord gave him the Lord gave him a word just this past Feast of Trumpets, and he said that the word was 9/11 revisited. Now, I want to make a point. It doesn't mean it's going to be on 9/11. But I'm not saying it's not going to be on 9/11. You understand? This, he goes on, if you watch from about you begin to watch from about the 1 hour mark, you'll see that, like something we spoke about before, the first temple, the second temple were destroyed on the 9th of Av. Well, the 9th of Av, counting from the beginning of the year in the fall feast, like Judah does, that makes the 9th of Av, the 11th month, the 9th day. So twice the first 2 temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av and the 9th of Av. Okay, which is an 11/9, 11/9. And then America 20 years ago had it on 9/11. Okay, he talks about 9 destruction and 11 being disorder. And he got the word from the Lord, and a word literally from the Lord that said his word this year is 9/11 revisited. and he shares something about what had happened to him in 1990 or 1991. And it was a vision that the Lord gave him in a moment. And there were 3 measures. 2 of those measures have happened. One wasn't on 9/11, one was on 9/11. So it doesn't mean the third one has to be on 9/11. But the reason I'm telling you this is because it can also still be on 9/11 as the second 9/11 for the church. You see? Because the judgment is coming to his people. It's coming to Judah and it's coming to the church. It's coming to the Jews and it's coming to the church. So what did we just read? What did we read in Deuteronomy? That he will use his enemies to bring use our enemies to bring the judgment. We know this thing is coming. It's just, is it going to be at the beginning, around the middle, or towards the end of these 50 days? At the beginning is possible. And our 50-day count revealed September 11th as day 1. Let's listen to what he says.
It's 9/11. So when I was seeking the Lord about the word that I have for this year, and when I was seeking the Lord here at the Feast of Trumpets, when I was seeking God Almighty and said, Lord, I need a word for the year to come, one of the very first words that I got was this word: next level, 9/11 revisited. And I want to just tell you that I asked the Lord to confirm this because I don't like that word at all. And I have a history of walking with God of something completely different than this. And while I am not comfortable delivering this word, I'm confident in delivering it and tell you that God Almighty told me next level, 9/11 revisited. I started seeing crazy things like, the shows that, all these 9/11 shows that are at the 20-year anniversary, the epicenters of 9/11 that's on HBO, or the echoes of 9/11 that's on NBC. There was this, Hollywood is talking about this repeat. And I'm like, it's funny. It's funny how God can do that. There's so many prophetic people that are not walking with God, that are in the world, that are still anointed prophetically. Like, that's amazing to me. Well, I can tell you also, too, that we've seen it in the headlines already this year. While you will remember 20 years ago what a fallen building looked like, you will also remember that this is a year that the Miami Surfside Complex happened. Look at this picture. That looks like 9/11. That happened this year. It was in our headlines this year. You can remember Jonathan Briley, the falling man, in that horrible picture. That's Jonathan Briley, who's a brother in Christ, and that's him falling. And said, man, I remember that horrible picture 20 years ago. Do you remember the pictures from 2 weeks ago? These are Afghans falling from an airplane. Remember that picture? Because that's in the headlines now, 20 years later. Okay, let me show you another incredible picture. These are the Afghans that were climbing on the airplane at the time, the same ones that was about to fall off. That's them. Can anybody see the numbers on the airplane that they fell off of? 1109. It's a mirror image of 9/11. A mirror image. So I see that, and I go, well, I think I'm going to give this word is what I think I'm going to do. And I think I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for it, and I think that people are not going to appreciate it. And I think that it's not a big feel-good word when I tell people that the Lord told me to tell you that 9/11 is next level revisited this year. Now, let me tell you something else before I tell you the really good news. This is big news, but it's not good news. Like, well, then it's not the gospel. No, this is the Lord, because, see, the word of God is life unto some and death unto others. John the Baptist came screaming, repent, repent. And in his mouth, he had locusts and honey at the same time. Honey is life and locust is death. So receive this if you have an ear to hear it and say, I know which sign I'm on. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to have to step out and tell you about an encounter that I had with King Jesus and tell you that it's a radical encounter. I've never had an encounter like it since. It's not a big staple in my life to have this kind of encounter where I have a vision in the daytime where God shows me something, and I have like real time that's relative to how much time it took for the Lord to show me, and then real time that is relative for how long I was in that event, and they don't match. The Lord can download 45 minutes into a split second into you. And he can give you an encyclopedia worth of information through one word. Paul says that he's scared to tell people about all the visions he's had and the things that he's done because people think that he's hyper spiritual or some kind of a Marvel comic superhero. I want to tell you, I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just driving. And when I drive really fast. And I was driving I-35, which is a prophetic number I'm not going to go off into. I was going into downtown Fort Worth, which is also a prophetic. If you had a dream and if it had the number 35 and if there was a fortress of worth, that would mean something. And I was driving, and I was northbound. Northbound means something. North, south, east, and west are all prophetic symbols of different things. East always represents, the coming of tomorrow or the promises of Jesus being fulfilled. The west tends to represent things that are carnal. It also represents the past. It represents your history. The south is where the south wind blows from, and it's mysterious, and it's the thing that you got to discern and you got to figure out that tells you when the seasons are changing. And the north is where the devil is always trying to invade and always trying to attack from. All 9 biblical sieges in the Bible all come from the north because it's the only way that it can come from. The devil says that he wants to sit in the congregation of the sides of the north. And so all 4 realms represent a myriad of layers of revelation. I was northbound. I was heading off into the devil's territory. And I went underneath the bridge, and in real time that it took me to go underneath this bridge, it might have been a second, not even a second. If I was doing whatever it was, I came under the shadow of this bridge. And I can tell you that after it was all over with, after I unpacked everything that God had shown me in this split second, I got to thinking about what the name of the bridge was, and it's called Seminary Street. And the Lord took me to school on that day. And here's what happened. Driving down the road in my old pickup truck, jamming, going. And boom, in one split second, I saw something prophetically that it took me a long time to unpack. And it was this. I saw, as it were, a computer grid of downtown Fort Worth, of downtown New York City, forgive me. And I saw this computer grid, and this is like in 1990 or 1991. And do you remember computer grids back then were like green? And they were like see-through. You could see the outline of buildings and things, but you could see all the way through it. Does anybody remember that? Anybody remember that army tank game they used to play that was just the outline of an army tank and you shot it? Come on, man. I'm talking about 1980s video games. So it was like that. It was a green screen. Things were outlined. I could see New York City. And it was like I went all the way around it. And then it was like it lifted up so I could see from way above it. And then it went back to where it was horizontal again. And when it did, the ground level lifted up so that I could see below the ground. But it was all just computer imagery that I could see all the way through. And then as I was looking at that, I saw somebody step out. It was a black background with green lines on it. And I saw this man step out, and I instantly knew that he was an angel of the Lord. And I knew you didn't mess with him. He never looked me in the eye. He was looking straight down, and he was holding this stick. And he was holding it like this. But it was bigger than this. It was something like this. And it was black. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that it represented a measure of judgment. I knew that it was a measuring stick of judgment. I just knew it. And as soon as I focused on the stick, I saw right through this guy, and I could see New York City again, and I saw an explosion below the ground. And none of the buildings fell. And then this man took the stick, and he made it twice as long. It was like it had a hinge on the side of it, on the end of it, and he went like this, and it unfolded to be twice the measure. And then I saw right through this guy, and I saw an explosion above the ground, and some of the buildings fell. And then I saw him take this stick and unfold it the other way. So now it was a full measure, and it was 3 different measures now. And whenever he unfolded the third part, I saw through him, and I saw an explosion at ground level, and all the buildings fell. Saw that in 1990 or 19.
You hear that? You're going to understand what he was shown. The first bombing underground in the World Trade Center. The second one, of course, the planes and some of the buildings falling down. And he was given the prophetic word from the Lord for this year. 9/11 revisited. And there was a third measure where something happened at ground level and all the buildings fell.
1991. I wish I could remember which year it was. But I can remember when
1990 or 1991,
we first saw the underground explosion at the World Trade Center. That was in 93, I think. It might have been 94. 93. Then I went, oh, man, the first measure of judgment. On 9/11, 20 years ago, whenever we first saw that Flight 11 ran into the buildings that looked like the number 11. When we first saw that, I was just sitting there just shaking my head at it. And then when I saw the second one, just the explosion of it. And I got to look at it and I went, explosions above ground. God help us, but I think that this might be the second measure of judgment. And then, of course, we saw what happened. So for 20 years, I've been praying against the third measure. Like, well, if God showed that to you, why would you pray against it? Because it's not his greatest heart. His greatest heart is that none should perish. His greatest heart is that all would repent. Like, wait a minute, if God shows you that, you should go out there and you should go prophesy that. No, I'll never do that. I've seen cancer in people before. You know what I prophesy? I prophesy life. That's what I prophesy. I don't prophesy cancer. God ain't in the cancer business. You mean old prophetic devil going around seeing a devil and everybody and everything. What's real is, man, if God shows you something like that, I think that you have to steward that. And like I've been like forever praying, like, Lord, I don't want to see this happen. That's not your heart, Lord. Lord God Almighty, so you love our nation and you love that city. And God, are you going to destroy that great city just like Nineveh? I bet it's got a few cows in it. That's how the book of Jonah ends.
Did you hear that? Are you going to destroy that just like when you went to Nineveh? Come on. This is exactly what we're talking about. The time of the 40 days of the Son of Man, as Jonah was, that Babylon is going to fall at some point within this time frame that we understand, that brings us to the end of the 50 days at the end of October. And he says, like Nineveh. Do you understand how powerful that was? You see, if you listen to the rest of this, he's a happy, joking guy, and he doesn't like to get into the heavy stuff and these prophetic types of things. So he decides not to say it, and he stewards it and he holds it. He didn't go around and tell them about it for the whole thing, that this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and tell everybody for the next 20 years after seeing the first one happen and then the second one happen. He still kept it to himself until live streamed September 8th, 2 days ago, when he said he prayed to ask the Lord for the word this year. And he understood he had to share the third measure. Brothers and sisters, I believe that third measure that will level New York City and some of the surrounding, I believe into Washington as well to an extent, that leveling will come about by the millstone. By the millstone cast into the sea. Remember, we're talking about Babylon again, right? Remember how we were looking at these things? You know, we understand there's this connection to John chapter 7, right? John chapter 7, all these things are in order. I believe this is the beginning of the 40 days of the Son of Man. Whether it's day 1 of the Feast of Tabernacles or whether it's in the midst of the feast when he comes up in secret. Okay? I still believe that it will begin at the beginning of the Jews' Feast of Tabernacles. That's the 50 days, as we know, on the 21st. Okay? You want to see something really cool? We know the 7th month, September is the 7th month. Well, we know that September, even though it's the 9th month in the Gregorian, the reason it's called September is because it's 7. October is because of 8, right? Nieve, 9. DS, 10 for December. But they were changed back about 400 years ago. We understand this, right? This is where April Fools comes in. When they made the change, we did a study on this a long time ago. That this with April Fools, without going all the way down that road, April Fools, they used to put little cutouts of fish and stick them on people's back and make fun of them because they didn't realize in the countryside that Rome had changed the beginning of the year from spring to January in the middle of winter. Okay, and they were made fun of, and eventually the whole world adopted it. But it was only 400 and some odd years ago, 400 or 500 years ago. All right, so this is why they have those names: September, October, November, December. And so September is the 7th month. And what day are we looking for? Well, first of all, the 7th month for Tishri, right, or for the Hebrew calendar, and September being 7 also in the proper understanding on the Gregorian is 7/21. Okay, not made up, clearly understood. 7/21. Check this out. I saw this the other day. Let's go to Revelation just to find a quick spot for it, nice and easy. Do you know the lamb? Do you know what the lamb's number is, brothers and sisters? Right here. Okay. In the midst of the elders stood a lamb. Look at the lamb's number. 7/21. Oh, that's not for good. I do have somewhat of a color scheme, but not really, but kind of do. So see, the lamb's number is 7/21. We're saying 7/21 is when the Lord shows up to begin his 40 days. And this is why I'm saying, I'm not telling you for sure it's tomorrow, but I'm telling you it's for sure within the next 50 days. It might be something we see coming as we go. Okay, could be something like that. It could be something that may begin and we're still here to experience part of it or to witness part of it. Okay, it still could be, because there's no help in Luke 20, in Luke 21, with Jerusalem being surrounded and being attacked from the north. And Babylon is gone out of the picture, and it's Cyrus the one that makes the declaration to allow them to rebuild. And we know that starts the beginning of the 7 years, or the 7 and 7, I should say, which leaves only to here for Babylon to be destroyed. Let's go look at a little bit more as to what takes place with Babylon and the stone. I don't know if you guys caught this, but a sister, this is why we say, come and join us in the forum. One of the sisters in the forum went through John and noticed that in chapters 1 through 7, there's always mention of water. In chapter 4 is the well. Chapter 7, Jesus says that all who come to him, right? He is the water of life. Where is it? All the way down here. See, flowing with living waters. He says this on the last day of Tabernacles. It's all, there's water in every single chapter until you get to chapter 8, which of course is them wanting to cast the stone at the woman. Okay, this woman caught in adultery. So this is where we say this casting of the stone. When I look at the calendar, I'm less inclined to think it's the 11th, but it's still possible. And I'm more inclined to think it's somewhere, maybe not the 20th, but like right in here. Okay, it's these approximate time frames within only about a month and a half. Okay, we're not throwing this stuff way out there, but we know this stone is coming. And it could very well be that it's right in here. Could even be that it's right in here. Once the fall feasts are over, that could be the stone's throw. Okay, somewhere in this time frame is what we're looking at. And I'm going to show you a little bit more reason why. And this is going to show us, again, take us into some really awesome descriptions about Babylon's fall. We've seen this before. Everybody knows this. Babylon is fallen. Look at this with delicacies. See, the word delicacies means luxury. Okay, there's one with luxury. Look what else we see. Revelation 18 verse 7. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, to be luxurious. Okay, I sit a queen and am no widow. Her plague shall come what? Listen to this. In one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. Okay, that's part of it. And here's the word deliciously again. Luxuriously, it's only used twice. And the other one was only used once. See, but it's living luxuriously and everything's so delicate. Okay, they're going to bewail her. All those that had done business with her. You're going to want to remember these things. All right. That great city, Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour, in 1 hour, in one day, everything's going to change. The merchants, okay, the merchants that you did deals with, okay, and that had the merchandise. Listen, let's keep going. For in 1 hour, so great riches come to naught, and every shipmaster and the company in ship, and all the company in ships and the sailors and all that trade by sea stood afar off, cried, right? That great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. Over and over and over and over. But you're going to remember this living luxuriously, this delicacies and being delicate. We're going to want to remember that, because you're going to see where all of this leads. You're going to see some scripture in the Old Testament that we haven't covered before, but that was revealed through the word delicacies and being delicate, which means to be living luxuriously. You're going to see a virtual reflection from Revelation 18 in a chapter in Isaiah. Listen to what happens next. Verse 21 in Revelation 18. And a mighty angel took up a stone, a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying thus, with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down and be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and of trumpeters shall be no more at all in thee, and no more craftsmen of whatsoever craft shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. Now listen to this. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. See, this is why it makes me think more this time frame of the beginning of tabernacles as the bride and the bridegroom, as the bride is taken out. Okay, shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. Here it is. A lot of people have been sharing this lately. This is exactly what's going on. For by the sorceries were all nations deceived. Whose sorceries, brothers and sisters? America's. Out of New York. Out of what? The UN also? Okay, out of Washington, that whole area. Who are the merchants but the great men of the earth? And what are they doing? They're buying what? The sorceries, right? A lot of people have been sharing this lately. The pharmakia, we know that, right? The witchcraft, the medicine by which what? All nations were deceived. 2 and 2, right? 2 and 2 equals 4. This is pretty straightforward, isn't it? This destruction that's coming about for everything Babylon has done. But in particular this time, this millstone is being cast for the sorceries of the medication, the pharmakia, the pharmacy witchcraft that you had all nations deceived in taking. Hello. This is the deception of the vaccine, brothers and sisters. It is not the mark of the beast. It is this right here. And I'm going to prove it to you with even greater evidence and show you why a program like eSword is so beautiful. Okay? All of these words, sorceries, the nations of men that bought, and the merchants, and in 1 hour and in 1 day, we're going to see it with those living deliciously, being in luxury. All of these things. If you guys recall, we've shared how this destruction in Leviticus 26 and this absolute devastation that's coming against them is for Judah, is for his people, for what they have missed, for what they've turned their back on. And so he's going to turn their back on them and get them to do things they would have never thought possible because of their contrived spirit and what they've done. He's going to go contrary to them. But if you remember, we also shared how Deuteronomy 28 is to the church, is to the house of Israel, if you will, is to what? The world. The world, and the other is Judah. Listen to this. We've shared this before about Deuteronomy. We saw how it's very similar to Leviticus, but Leviticus 26 is clearly for the 7 years and their disobedience and everything else. But in this one, we see that the oppressor and the spoiling that's come against them. Let's go down a little bit further. You see, all thy trees, remember? All the trees, that represents all the world. That's the house of Israel. That's the 70 years, all that stuff, right? Listen to this. Because in Deuteronomy, starting verse 47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. America is the most abundant on earth in the Lord. Okay. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee. Okay. So this part here is about the nation. This is the nation against nation. This is when America is attacked by the bear. Okay. This is when they're fully being attacked in America. But we're going to see these connections to Babylon within it and be even greater connected to Revelation 18 to be able to show that it's at the beginning by connecting it to a chapter in Isaiah. Okay. It says, shall bring a nation from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as an eagle flies, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce continents. So they're going to be scary to look at, and you're not going to understand their language. Obviously not English. Which shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. They'll destroy your cattle and so forth. It goes on, and listen to this. Let's go verse 53. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body. Ah, crap, here it is again. Okay. This is the other one was Judah and what they're going to do. Because the Lord will turn on them and it will make them contrary to their normal ways. This is also going to happen to the church. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother and toward the wife of his bosom and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. Okay, here's that word delicate. What is it? Luxurious. This is the same word we were reading in Revelation, and it was only found in Revelation chapter 8. It was used one time in one way, and then the other 2 times were the same. And it was only in Revelation 18 about Babylon, of which Babylon is also America. But Babylon, there's that great city, which is New York. So here it's talking about this attack coming on America. America is, you can say, the head of the church, if you will. He's coming to wake his people up. And this luxurious, and these people that are delicate in their luxurious living are going to be devastated not knowing how to live when World War III breaks out upon them. Look, so that he will not give to any of them the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat. What? And then here it is again. The tender and delicate woman. Here it is again. And it goes on to say that she's going to do the same thing. Again, always about having been in luxury. But you see, this one being used twice in Deuteronomy is used a total of 3 times. Is used a total of 3 times. Again, wrong color for this one. Is used a total of 3 times. 2 of them are in Deuteronomy. And what I realized was for the first time. You see, there's one in Isaiah 47. And I said, Isaiah 47, that's a strange one. Let's go see what Isaiah 47 has to say. I'd never looked at it before. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of daughter of the Chaldees, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. This is the word delicate that we were just talking about in Deuteronomy 28. Watch this. What was it? 47. Okay. There it is right here. The third time. And the word tender. See this word tender? Being tender, like being weak, being soft. Americans are soft compared to the way Russians got to live. Okay. Talking about being soft, being tender. And if you go and look up the word, now I know a lot of Americans are saying, I ain't tender. What are you talking about? I'm not talking about the military and those guys. I'm talking about the people in general. Look at this word tender. It shows up twice in the same place. The tender man that is delicate in his luxury living, and the tender woman who is delicate in her luxurious living. Both of them in the same place of Deuteronomy, just as we're sharing this one in Isaiah 47. Well, check this out. That's nothing. That's just getting started. Take the millstones. To pulverize, that's the millstones, those big circles with a hole in the middle, and they use those to grind. Didn't we just read that in Revelation 18? We're talking about delicate being luxurious. We're talking Revelation 18 about them then sending the millstone to destroy it. Throw the millstone, cast the millstone into the water to destroy to destroy Babylon. Well, it gets better. Let me go into this one because I made the certain highlights. Verse 9, Isaiah 47, verse 9. But these two things shall come upon thee in a moment, in one day. That's exactly what we just read in Revelation 18. In a moment, in one day, the loss of children, the widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries. Hello. Literally what we were reading in Revelation 18. Let's go to verse 9. Here it is. In a moment, in a day. For what? For the multitude of thy sorceries. Witchcraft, sorcery, magic, right? The Greek was the pharmakia. Medicine. It's exactly the same. Verse 11. Therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. Skip to here. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now in thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, within thou hast labored from thy youth, if so thou shalt be able to profit. Profiting from their sorceries. Oh yeah, well, when this comes upon you, in a moment, in a day, suddenly, try to have your sorceries continue to profit you. You won't prevail. This is what it's saying. It's like another portion of Revelation 18. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. You see, they won't be able to. They're about to be destroyed. Then we read in Revelation 18, behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. It's going to be a flame. It is going to be fire that's going to burn them. But it's also going to be this what? This millstone of fire cast into the ocean that's going to destroy those buildings, and then things are going to be on fire. Thus shall they be unto thee, with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants. This is Revelation 18, for crying out loud. From thy youth, even thy merchants from thy youth, they shall wander, every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. Oh my goodness. I had never seen this before. And it was this revelation of seeing the word for the third time about the delicacies or being delicate. It's the luxurious living and the devastation that is going to come upon them unawares, waiting for all these people to see who's going to save them. That it's going to come in a moment, that it's going to be in a day. And all those who are with you, all those merchants, as it said. See, where is it? All the merchants, where are the merchants? Oh, you guys saw it. The merchandise. Oh, there it is. The merchants of the earth wept and mourned over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise anymore. See, again, there it is. They won't be able to buy anymore. And what are they doing? They're all standing afar off. None would come and help. They all just weep at the loss of the sorceries by which all nations were being deceived, and the great men of those nations were being made rich. Brothers and sisters, this is the beginning. The sorceries over all nations that's deceiving the world is the vaccine that's being given right now. That is the deception. It is not the mark of the beast. It is the deception that's going to bring about this destruction of Babylon, the great city, and the beginning of World War III. As we can see, this great city has got to be destroyed at some point in the beginning of this time frame that we're talking about. We can see it, we can discern it, we can understand it. This was a powerful, powerful word about the three measures having seen in 1999 or 91, two of those measures having happened, and one measure being left. And the word he was given was 9/11 revisited. Whether it's tomorrow, in hours from now, or whether it's in days, that third measure of destruction is coming. It is about to be released on Babylon, that great city. So, brothers and sisters, keep watching, keep praying, keep seeking. Take the time to rewatch these videos, to digest them and to understand them, so that you can share your understanding with others to help prepare people, to help wake them up. This is the moment in time. And it's probable that the bride will see this. So be ready, be watching, and may the fear of the Lord be in us all. I love you guys. God bless you. God bless your families. Talk to you soon, or see you sooner. Bye for now.